Hello, I'm Anewz here. It would be quite challenging, if not entirely impossible, to find a nation with a more complicated constitutional structure than Bosnia and Herzegovina anywhere on the European continent. That complexity is a result of compromise, born of a delicate ethnic balance and layered history, and sustained by what appears to be a form of enduring political will. My guest today is a man who led his country as both Prime Minister and Foreign Minister in the early 2000s, and is widely known for his intellectual worth, the force of his character, and unshakable gravitas. He is today the standard bearer of Bosnia and Herzegovina on the international stage by virtue of being its permanent representative to the United Nations, and also is member of the Nizami Ganjavi International Centre. Your Excellency Zlatko Lagumdžija, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your program.
Thank you very much. You're one of the most defining and principal political figures of post-war Bosnia and Herzegovina, having led the Social Democratic Party from 1997 to 2014, and you served as Prime Minister and Foreign Minister simultaneously, and then as Foreign Minister from 2012 to 2015. Do you believe that, bearing in mind that your own pan-European character and proportions, do you believe that Bosnia and Herzegovina today is able to project a voice on the world stage commensurate with your own standing and vision?
Well, thank you for that very core question, especially following your introductory remarks about my country. As you know, as a result of aggression on Bosnia and Herzegovina, we became an independent state back in '92 and got full membership of United Nations together with the new independent states as a result of this, as a result of the solution of former Yugoslavia. Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina became the members of the United Nations in May 22nd, 1992. We were submitted to aggression of neighboring country, and after 3 years of war, that ended with something which was an international Hague Tribunal for former Yugoslavia sentenced people with their names were sentenced for verdict of genocide, the last genocide in 20th century, hopefully the last one in our history, in Srebrenica. Dayton Peace Accord brought the peace. I remember I was not having in mind actually the structure, the complicated structure that will be very hard to run. I was not so happy about the results of the Dayton Peace Accord, and I caught myself saying, well, the Dayton Peace Accord brought us nothing else but the peace. Then I realized how stupid that comment is, because peace is something that you have to cherish and flourish and grow and develop and support. Because I was comforting myself with the words by saying that peace is not everything, but without peace, nothing is possible. So we in Bosnia and Herzegovina have 30 years after Dayton, we live in peace. And that shows actually that peace is something that is precondition for everything else. Nation building, because have in mind that back in Dayton, the structure that was established in Dayton had so-called evolutionary mechanism in it. Reform mechanism, our constitution has mechanisms that is supporting evolution of our, as we like to say, from Dayton phase to Brussels phase, to become normal European Union and NATO country. So having said so, I think it is very important to understand that 30 years after, Bosnia and Herzegovina is much stronger than it was back, wounded, strongly wounded under, let's say, surgeries, if I can put it that way, surviving 3 years of aggression with an uncomparable stronger force that was trying to destroy the country and dissolve the country. So my point is very simple. If Switzerland, for example, was back 30 years ago given Dayton Peace Accord and have a constitution like Bosnia and Herzegovina, I'm not sure that Switzerland would be in better shape than it is today. So what I'm trying to say is that Bosnia and Herzegovina showed that our history, tradition, and living as a multi-ethnic society for centuries, multi-ethnic societies, multi-religious societies, for centuries, we show, basically speaking, the core of the country, the nature of the society. And the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina is much stronger than any dissolution elements or potential aggressions and atrocities that were submitted to the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So my point is very simple. Yes, we are on a way to be much, much better country than we are today. But we went a long, long road behind us to become more stable and more, let's say, organized like other countries are.
As you said, your nation's constitutional order is indeed very intricate, to say the least. How did that complexity feel from within, as someone who governed the country? In particular, and what I'm interested about that intricacy there, how difficult is it to sustain a political vision that is not bound by ethnicity in such a system?
Excellent question. You see, I was in a different position when I was running leader of the party, Social Democratic Party of Bosnia and Herzegovina, in much, let's say, worse position than leaders of other parties who were running for the parliament. Let me remind you that the SDP, Social Democratic Party, was the only party whose members of the parliament were for 2 decades coming, and almost 3 decades, were coming from more than one ethnic group. All parties, other parties that were in Bosnian parliament were either formed, and members of the parliament were only exclusively either Bosniaks or Muslims, Serbs or Orthodox, Catholics or Croats. Bosnia and Herzegovina has only one party, that was SDP at the time when I was leading SDP, that our party was a party that has members of the parliament who are coming from different ethnic groups, Bosniaks, Serbs, Croats and others, Jews and any other citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So for us, it was very hard to compete in an environment in which we have a constitution that is actually designed for the ethnic parties, if I can put it there, for ethnic organizations. We were trying to beat the system because we thought, and that's my political position, is that you have to be, you can be whatever you want to. Your identity, either Muslim, Catholic, Orthodox, or other Jews or whatever, your ethnic identity or religious identity should not be your profession. In a country like Bosnia and Herzegovina, where people of different religions and ethnicities were living, as I said, for centuries in peace and harmony and coexistence in something which we call today shared society, it is not normal that parties are organized only along ethnic lines. So that's the reason why it was very important that political forces that are promoting multi-ethnicity in political sense and living multi-ethnicity in political sense. Just to give you an example, when I was foreign minister, deputy prime minister, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, my vice president was president of the country. And we were coming from different ethnic groups, but we are coming from the same political party. So this is something that it is important that we flourish our identities and that we have our identities being guarded by guarding everyone else's identities and promoting our unity in diversity. Of course, that idea of unity in diversity, that we are all different, but we are all together, sharing the same space, having same tradition, sharing our cultures, and being richer because of our differences, not having our differences as a liability, that is something that can drive my country forward. And to finalize it, you see, the nature of Western Balkan is also multi-ethnic, shared society's nature. The nature of European Union is also unity and diversity. If 2 million, 3 million people, 4 million people in Bosnia and Herzegovina can live together in their differences in the very heart of the Europe, how you can expect that Europe can live in peace and coexistence in the future if they do not respect unity and diversity? So we, 4 million, 4 million of us who live in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we have to promote unity and diversity for the sake of our future and for the sake of the future of the broader region and the sake of the future of Europe.
We'll come back to the point about unity and diversity, in particular in the context of your nation's aspirations to become a full member of the European Union. Now I would like to focus on your legacy. You returned to the country, if memory serves me correctly, in the early 90s as a computer scientist and went on to lead the Socialist Democratic Party, as I mentioned earlier, from 1997 to 2014. Your career was it looks like a roller coaster, with both marked by both ascendancy and also reversals, winning the elections in the early 2000s, and we remember 2002, then returning to high office later from 2012 to 2015 as foreign minister. When you look back, what is your own assessment of your own legacy, and what is your view of the party that you once led?
Well, just as you said, my political life was almost like, as you said, nicely put it, nicely roller coaster. Just to remind you, I came back from the United States from my postdoctoral Fulbright scholarship when I was researching and teaching in the US back after Berlin Wall fall down in Sarajevo. And I was never involved in politics. When the country got independence in 92, when we were attacked, when there was the first independent Bosnia and Herzegovina national unity government, I joined that government on behalf of opposition at that time, and being deputy prime minister, if first independent government of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In charge, it's kind of strange today, I was in charge of cooperation with the United Nations, organizations, because we were, at that time, the biggest problem was presence of UNPROFOR that was supposed to prevent, let's say, the war going on, and different humanitarian organizations. Of course, as you rightly pointed out, you see, today when I turn back behind, I want to underline that I never gave up my academic university position, because I was professor at economic faculty at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering. I established Center for Management and Information Technologies, working in computer science, competitiveness, leadership with new technologies, artificial intelligence, and a lot of things. So I never left my academic life. And when I got tired of my political career back in 2010, 11, I left political life, official political life, and I devoted myself to the academic work and to different international projects. One of my favorite projects is my membership in the board of Nizami Ganjavi International Center. And that's one of the platforms that I'm using very much in promoting what I used to promote all my life, which is unity and diversity, which is, because just to remind you, I mean, you are someone who I don't have to talk too much about, but I was very attracted by the idea that sometimes in 12th century, someplace in a far away from my country, in Ganja, there was a philosopher, poet, great Nizami Ganjavi, who was promoting peace, tolerance, dialogue, respect, learning, and understanding. You see, those words, dialogue, respect, learning, and understanding, those 4 words were lived by Nizami Ganjavi in 12th century. Can you imagine how those 4 words today should resonate? How those 4 words, dialogue, respect, learning, and understanding, are needed today in 21st century, more than even in 12th century in any part of the world. So my life, if I can say that, political, personal, academic, intellectual life, you don't have to be politician to be in politics. We all have to be political persons, from academic, from civil society, from media, from whatever. We have to be thinking politically, not being politicians. So that's the reason why I withdrew from political position 15 years ago, but I remained being political on international scene, promoting exactly those values that I was promoting when I was leader of Social Democratic Party, when I was prime minister, foreign minister in my country. Dialogue, respect, learning, and understanding. So those 4 words, I'm filtering all my decisions in my life through those 4 words. Am I committed to it? Do I really think that way? Do I talk that way? And ultimately, do I walk that way? I'm trying to do all those things together.
Thank you very much indeed, Your Excellency. Let's go back to the internal situation within Bosnia and Herzegovina and the question of dialogue within the nation, inside the country. We know that the leadership of Republika Srpska continues to express some aspirations which are not really positively received by those people in Sarajevo. How concerned are you about that particular element? And particularly I'm asking this question in the context of foreign influence coming from Serbia and Russia.
Well, I'll be very precise with you. 2 years ago, after being out of the political life, I was called by, at that time, new elected president, who used to be my vice president in the party, who I didn't have so much contact in an interim period. He invited me to his office and discussed about what is happening in the country, in the region, and globally. And because he was following my work in my public appearances in different conferences in media, which I was very vocal and very clear after the Russian aggression on Ukraine back in 2022. And I was warning that Russian aggression in Ukraine is not going to stop in Ukraine if we do not take this thing very seriously and we don't defend international law and defending the right of one country to exist, like it is Ukraine. That may spill over to Western Balkan and to Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. And then I was basically speaking, asked by the president if I could come for some period of time and go to be permanent representative of the United Nations because of the fact that Bosnia and Herzegovina, as a Dayton Peace Accord driven country, is still on 2 times a year in an agenda of Security Council in the sense of implementation of peace accord and how does it function. Because I was very clear that Russians and Belgrade are trying to use this opportunity of this turbulent world that everything is actually becoming fuzzy and we are witnessing the establishment of a new world order, if we can put it that way, that some things may be jeopardizing the future of my country called Bosnia and Herzegovina. Of course, what leadership in Banja Luka, and there is, if I can say, we can have a BBM axis, Banja Luka, Belgrade, Moscow axis, in which there are forces that are trying to destabilize Bosnia and Herzegovina and destabilize the region. There are no doubts about it. But let me be very precise. Forces that are trying to destabilize the region and actually destabilize Bosnia and Herzegovina are forces that are trying to do secession of the part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is contradicting to international law, which is contradicting to our constitution, which is contradicting the Dayton Peace Accord, which is basically speaking into contradicting the very, very nature of existence of the country, which is guaranteed by Dayton Peace Accord and guaranteed by Constitution. So what we are witnessing today, and it looks like we are now, let's say, getting in a little bit area in which I hope that Mr. Dodik and people who are supporting him from Belgrade to Moscow are realizing that their way to secession of part of Bosnia and Herzegovina is over, and they are going to, let's say, go back to normality, try to find a way how to, let's say, sort out the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina differently. What I'm trying to say is that secessionist forces are very clear. They're violating not only Constitution and as international peace accord, but they are violating our laws and our international agreements. I'll just give you an example. The gentleman who leads secessionist forces in Republika Srpska is a gentleman who is openly saying that we should not be going to European Union because European Union is going to fall apart anyway in a few years. So we should not go to European Union. We should go try to get closer to BRICS or whatever. Anyway, my point is very simple. This is not going to happen. I mean, the secession of the country is a road to nowhere, and this is something that definitely, after last year of attempts to go in that direction, I think we are on the way to sort it out properly.
It looks like that Bosnia and Herzegovina's journey from Dayton phase to Brussels phase is sort of still underway. Your nation is yet to be member of a European Union, and those challenges appearing to be perfectly surmountable to many optimists in your country and beyond. You earlier mentioned about international law, international legal order. As a man of great experience in the face of international law and international relations, how concerned are you about the erosion of international institutions? Some argue that what may follow the current system might not necessarily be better. What is your feeling about it? I'm asking this question in particular in the context of what's happening regarding Ukraine, about its consequences, and some talk which is still in the air, which is effectively based on the idea that Ukraine may potentially, but not necessarily, be forced to accept some of the results emanating from Russian occupation. Recently, I think the American officials talked about the possibility of recognizing Russian control over some of the occupied territories.
Well, of course, international community has a significant role in every conflict today. You can count the conflicts that are going on in the world today, but that number is, being different on a weekly basis. There are 6 big conflicts at this very moment. There are 40 plus conflicts, smaller size conflicts that are happening all over the world. But speaking about Ukraine, that is the big issue that's been going on for it's already 2.5 years. I only have to say that the only people who are in charge of the Ukrainian future are people of Ukraine. And people of Ukraine have to be deciding about their future. Of course, we have to support them because we are supporting Ukraine while supporting international law. And we are supporting Ukraine or not supporting Ukraine is actually supporting the concept of international law or supporting the concept of might is right. If might is right, they will start living in a global jungle. And that will be the end of normal life for everyone in the world. If I can say, we don't need to wait for climate change to clean the floor with human species. We can evaporate ourselves if we accept that the international law is respected, but the might is. So that's the reason why today in Ukraine, we are talking about the future of not only Ukraine, but we are talking about the future of the broader Europe, broader region, and ultimately global order. Now, having said so, I want to be very precise. I think that we can all learn from our experience, and we are learning from your experience. I'll give you an example. I mean, you see, if the might is right, Azerbaijan, President Aliyev, would long time ago, he would give up what was actually being held as occupied territory. Karabakh was occupied by a neighboring country. But Azerbaijan never gave up their right that this is integral part of Azerbaijan, even when it looked like this is something that is gone. So my point is very simple. We have to respect international law. The fact that it took almost 30 years to Azerbaijan to get back the things where they should be from the very beginning, since the occupational part of the country, you never gave up the idea that this is part of Azerbaijan. And ultimately, you did it. So I think that we in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as Ukrainians, as the other people, we should never give up what is our right. For example, our right is to be one country, sovereign country on overall territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. If someone wants to create Nagorno-Karabakh in Bosnia and Herzegovina called Republika Srpska, it can do it. He can do it for a period of time, but it will not stand because we will never give up. The same approach I'm suggesting to everyone else in the world. In a certain period of time, you may be forced to, let's say, follow reality on the ground, but you should never accept that the reality of the ground is something that you will yourself admit and make it as a part of international law. The history, modern history of Azerbaijan, modern history of my country, I think is a good example for a lot of people all over the world. And after all, you know, we have a lot of things in common. As I said, it was, I think, 15 years ago when I led a group of parliamentarians when we adopted in the parliament resolution that was actually giving support to the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Azerbaijan, and especially pointing out memory and remembrance of Hojala, because we in Bosnia and Herzegovina, with our experience in Bosnia and Herzegovina, with our experience of Srebrenica genocide, being verdict in Hague, we are very, very sensitive to everyone in the world who is going through similar situations. Yesterday it was Srebrenica, it was Hojala, today it's Gaza. Who knows what should be tomorrow? Some parts of Ukraine are in the same situation. We have to learn our lessons and promote the spirit of what we promoted in my country, in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Azerbaijan and other parts of the world, which have proud part of the history when they did not give up what is their right against the might.
That's what President Aliyev said a couple of days ago in Khankandi on day one of Shusha Global Media Forum in response to the question posed by Ukrainian journalists that never ever agreed to occupation as a violation of international law. Your Excellency, you're actively involved in international digital cooperation, including United Nations work on ethical artificial intelligence governance. As artificial intelligence escalates and accelerates at an increasingly exponential pace, do you feel that humanity is prepared morally and politically, and also in a sense institutionally, for what lies ahead? A couple of days ago in Shusha, the key theme about during that media forum was about, will we be governed by our own creation will artificial intelligence, which is a thinking platform, will be in a position of influencing us in such a way that we will not be able to deter some of the negative elements of it. What do you make of this great debate in the context of artificial intelligence governance?
You're absolutely right. We are not prepared for what's coming on, what is ahead of us. Artificial intelligence, thanks to the technological progress, is going exponentially rocketing, skyrocketing. Our, let's say, institutional framework for artificial intelligence is flatline. And maybe it's going a little bit up, but it's not catching up the technological path. What I want to say is that I think that there are three major threats that we as a humanity today are facing. One is potential escalation that we can end in a nuclear catastrophe. And that's something that we are talking very often, especially when the conflicts like Ukraine and even conflict in Iran, between Iran and Israel happens on prime time news. We start being afraid of potential nuclear Armageddon. So that's one threat. And that is the threat that is taking more media time because we are kind of easy understanding that. The second threat that is definitely jeopardizing our future is climate change. And this is not so acceptable by a lot of people in the world, and a lot of people in the world do not understand that with climate change, there's no privilege class that can be saved, and this privilege class will go on and be extinct. If climate change proceeds the way, if the temperature, every temperature on the ground gets higher and higher and gets over the limits, everyone will be, we as a species, as a human beings, as sapiens, we will be on the way to be extinct, and there will be no way to save us as a humanity. But the third, and of course, as I said, nuclear threat, climate change, there are a lot of multilateral and bilateral attempts and countries' attempts to tackle those problems. But the issue of third big threat is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a threat that we are not taking as seriously as we should. And I think that there is a lot of reasons, and we have a lot of interactions here in different multilateral organizations. As a matter of fact, for example, even that's not the issue that can be sorted out by one institution, one country, one multilateral organization. For example, we as Nizami Ganjavi International Center, we are organizing a lot of events that we are promoting in dialogue and interaction between different state and multilateral players, among other issues, is because that's part of our, let's say, philosophy: dialogue, respect, learning, and understanding. We have to have a dialogue about artificial intelligence, understand that what's going on. We have to be having respect to each other's positions. We have to learn a lot, and we have to be understanding each other's threats, because artificial intelligence can be ending in something which can be the same ending as we are afraid of nuclear threat or climate change. So let me put it this way. Back in 1945, the very first resolution that was adopted by General Assembly in San Francisco was a resolution which established a commission for atomic energy. And that commission was actually existing for more than 10 years doing nothing. And back after the Korean War, after hydrogen bomb were actually started being a reality of the big superpowers, something which is called International Agency for Atomic Energy was established. It took 10 years. It took 10 years to establish that agency, which is in latest history of almost 70 years, is trying to control atomic energy in overall context, not only for military uses, but also for civilian use. I think it's about time that we start thinking about something that will be dealing with artificial intelligence the way International Atomic Energy Agency is dealing with atomic energy. We have to, because if it is given to one country, then the problem is that not that country is going, because we have some leaders of the great countries who were saying who will be leading artificial intelligence will be leading the world in next next part of our history. The only problem is that if one country starts leading and being stronger than everyone else in artificial intelligence, the question is only when the day will come when that country will be conquered by its own artificial intelligence. So whatever country wants to deal with artificial intelligence, to conquer other natural intelligence, well, the problem will be that we will be all losing. So I'm promoting very strong international cooperation on ethical and robust but more beneficial artificial intelligence for all of us. Not for some of us, but for all of us.
I think that Tony Blair, former British Prime Minister, was Prime Minister at the time you were Prime Minister in early 2000s, said something along those lines very, very recently about the artificial intelligence actually defining the sense of superiority amongst international actors, also outlining importance of course, global cooperation. Your Excellency, we discussed a number of issues, but I would like to, if with your permission, if it's okay, go back to the subject about European Union. Bosnia and Herzegovina has been a candidate country since 2022, and we talked about internal structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is incredibly complex. Do you think EU membership, final membership, would soften or even override Bosnia's internal complexities? Once Bosnia is member of Bosnia and Herzegovina is member of the European Union, probably those internal complexities will not matter the way they do now. Would that be a fair assessment?
I think that there are a few reasons why so much promoting European Union as being enlarging to the Western Balkan, and in particular to my country. I just want to tell you that on latest polls that were done last 2 weeks ago, that we've been doing every year since last 10-15 years, 70% of the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina, if tomorrow would be a referendum, shall we join the European Union, 70% of citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina would be saying yes. And that support for European Union is probably bigger than, I won't say in all of the EU countries, but you have a lot of EU countries that today, if they would have a referendum of will we stay in the European Union, I don't think that there are many countries in which citizens of those European Union countries, 70% of them would say, would say yes, we want to stay in the European Union. So support of Bosnian citizens for the European Union is almost unquestionable. Why we are so much interested in the European Union? It's not only because we will be then the part of, let's say, the biggest peace project in modern history, which European Union is. It's not that we will be part of big economic space or big space of where people have free flow of goods, finance, people, and informations. We would be organized the way that every country in Europe is. So I'm absolutely sure that on our way to fulfill EU requirements, we would have to adjust our constitutional framework accordingly to the norms and rules and to norms and rules that apply to European Union. So adjusting, and of course in our constitution we have mechanism how we can adjust our legal framework and our constitutional framework according to European Union requests. And my final point is, you see, European Union membership is something that is part of our international obligations. We signed Stabilization and Association Agreement with the European Union, which was unanimously passed and ratified in Parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So our commitment to European Union, strategic commitment, is unquestionable. Of course, we have on daily basis some politicians who are for different political reasons, or for secession, or for playing for the forces outside of our country, are challenging our European path, but that path is inevitable. And I'm sure that on that pathway, we will, let's say, fulfill our, as you said, Brussels phase, originating in Dayton phase 30 years ago. Having said so, I want to underline that it is very important that the growth plan that was established by the European Union and adopted by 6 countries of Western Balkan is something which is giving us a chance that we slowly integrate ourselves in Western Balkan and we cooperate along the European rules, along different circles. First, to economically cooperate in Western Balkans. So the 6 countries of Western Balkan are organized the way, economically, the way European Union countries is. And when that happens, then that is enough for that is maybe no more than 2 years if there's political will for that, then overall Western Balkan can be integrated in European economic space. Just like, for example, Norway or Switzerland are integrated in European economic space, not being member of European Union. The next thing is green transition. European Green Deal is offering also the prospect of Western Balkan and my country that we integrate ourselves in European Green Deal. Same thing applies to education, to healthcare, and so on. So on the pathway to that, we would be negotiating as a candidate country to adjust our overall legal framework. And in adjusting our legal framework, we would shape our institutions the way they should be more functional and more efficient, and basically speaking, being service to all citizens, regardless of their religion or ethnic background. And that's my philosophy, and that's why my philosophy, unity and diversity, that is a paradigm for European Union, is something which I started living intellectually, personally, that type of philosophy, that type of policy. I wasn't thinking about European Union, I was thinking about 500 years of Bosnian history, where we historically, under different empires, under Ottoman Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Kingdom of Yugoslavia, fascism, occupation, Tito Yugoslavia, we were living in one society where people of different religious groups were living together with all the differences and respecting each other, especially in times where the rest of Europe was not so much organized in shared societies, when the rest of Europe and parts of Europe were killing each other, exterminating because of religion and ethnical differences. We back there in Bosnia and Herzegovina lived in one shared society. And we have to, let's say, try to show that it is possible in the European Union in democracy. So shared society is not something that lives only under occupation.
So Bosnia and Herzegovina, the entire region, is naturally part of the European project. I mean, both politically, spiritually, in terms of aspiration and so forth. But South Caucasus is different. It's on the continental fault line. We're not entirely sure whether one day Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia will be this country will be members of the European Union or not. There's no clear answer to this question. And Azerbaijan and Bosnia and Herzegovina have cultivated very strong ties over the past couple of years, in particular after their 2023 Strategic Partnership Declaration. It's my last question, Your Excellency. What, in your view, should be the next steps to accelerate this relationship, especially in areas like energy, connectivity, infrastructure, and international trade?
You named in your question actually the areas which together would be my answer. Yes, we have to strengthen, use the opportunity of that strategic partnership that President Aliyev signed with our presidency back 2 years ago. We have to give the content to that strategic partnership, and you're absolutely right. The first areas that are on a table should be energy, especially because after COP29, Azerbaijan is recognized not only as a energy supplier country for Europe, but also as a leader in renewable energy, in fighting with climate change on a global scale. So I'm sure that this momentum that was created with COP29, where Bosnia and Herzegovina participated and signed all practical documents that were offered by Azerbaijan as global multilateral documents, and when we combine that with our strategic partnership document between our two countries, I think we have solid platform to proceed with working together on energy transition, green transition, using mutual, let's say, capacities. That's one point. Second thing is trade, as you said, and of course, trade is economic trade is something that is on the top of the list, and especially when we combine the investment, trade, and energy. We have a lot of experience from Azerbaijan and potential initiatives from Azerbaijan to actually enter the renewable areas of energy in Bosnia and Herzegovina and use Bosnia and Herzegovina as hub of the region for renewable energy as well. And of course, but what is also should be not underestimated. There is long history in between our two countries when we were part of bigger structures. Just to remind you that Bosnia and Herzegovina was capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Sarajevo, when we were part of Tito Yugoslavia. We were sister city with Baku, because Azerbaijan was in Soviet Union. Azerbaijan was designated as a republic of Soviet Union that is closer to Bosnia and Herzegovina as part of former Yugoslavia. And Sarajevo and Baku were two cities that have a long tradition of being sisters countries, even in a time when we were part of bigger structures before we got independence. So there are a lot of similarities in between Azerbaijan and Bosnia and Herzegovina in cultural sense, and in social sense, and traditional sense. So we are people who understand each other much better than usual suspects do.
Your Excellency, I'm very grateful to you for this absolutely fantastic and very extensive conversation. There are many other issues that I would have liked to discuss with you, in particular the peace-building efforts, the lessons that could have been learned, also demining efforts there, because there is a great deal of cooperation between Azerbaijan and Bosnia and Herzegovina in the field of demining, because Azerbaijan itself suffered from that particular problem. But hopefully at some point later in the fullness of time. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you. All the best and greetings to all our shared viewers.
Thank you very much indeed, Your Excellency. That was Zlatko Lagumdžija, Bosnia and Herzegovina's permanent representative to the United Nations and former Prime Minister and former Foreign Minister, member of the Nizami Ganjavi International Center, joining us here on Anewz Exclusive. I'm Orkun Amashov, and see you very soon indeed.